crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I'm here with another 6x6 paper pad tutorial. This one's going to be a little bit different for a few reasons, but it's going to be a Christmas paper pad, and I had a lot of people ask me to do a Christmas paper pad tutorial. I didn't have any full Christmas paper pads from past years, and I thought rather than going out and buying an old one that might be harder to find, I would kind of see what was new for this year. I've noticed that a lot of companies haven't yet released their Christmas paper, which kind of makes sense. It is only July, but some of them are starting to come out soon. I decided to instead check my local big box store. This paper pad and sticker roll are from Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby had quite a few different 6x6 paper pads, and they had two, including this one, that had some cut-apart designs in them. The other one had a dog theme to it, and this has more of a woodland animal theme to it. So considering that, I thought that it would work well for this video. I know not everyone has a Hobby Lobby, and I don't think you can purchase any of their stuff online, but I think that a lot of these ideas could be used on other paper pads. Another reason that I wanted to do a Christmas theme is because I know a crafter on Instagram who is having a holiday card drive. She's specifically looking for holiday cards and not Christmas cards, just because so the card drive is for children with congenital heart disease, and the nurses may not know what holiday the child celebrates, and so they were just asking for general holiday cards in this particular drive, and I am going to sponsor this because there are going to be some prizes for people who participate, so my digital stamp store is one of the sponsors for this card drive. I was flipping through the paper pad, and as you saw, there are some sheets with really large designs, like the owl, the deer, the Santa, and I'm going to start by cutting those up and sort of like framing the designs that are on them, knowing that that would be the way that ultimately I'd want to use it, and then putting those scraps to the side for other ideas later. And then I also took out the woodland animal squares. This paper pad has 3 of each design. It has 48 sheets, I believe, and, well, 48 divided by 3, does that work? Because one of my sheets only had 2. But there's 3 of almost all designs except for 1. I don't know how the math works on that. Sorry. I should have thought about that before recording the video. But anyway, there's 48 sheets in the pad, but one of mine only had 2, so maybe I either got chipped or something happened there. But I cut apart the little animals. And I had 3 sheets of those, and there was 9 on each sheet, so I have like 9 times 3 is 27. I have 27 little animals. So I know that I'll be able to make 27 cards with the animals, but I do make 43 cards in all. I am going to do what I do a lot of times and pick some sheets to cut down to 3x3 squares. Particularly in this instance, because all of the animals are 2x2, I knew that some 3x3s would be something good to mat them on. I chose some brown wood grain paper and some of this red paper. Basically, I went through and tried to find some relatively small or monochromatic patterns so that they would provide a nice layer or mat in between the animal and the more busy pattern papers that are available in the set. Most of the pattern paper from the paper pad is going to be cut down to just less than an A2 size card, which an A2 size card is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so my papers will be cut to 4 by 5 1/4, pretty standard for me. I started, as I said, by taking out things that had large patterns so I could cut them into something that framed the pattern like I framed the deer. Then I went to the cut aparts, then to really small patterns to create layering pieces, and then finally to the boldest patterns in the set, and I cut those to the standard card size because I tend to like the bold patterns to be actually the largest sheets on a design. Part of the reason that I chose to get the stickers is because you could very easily add stamps to this, but the stickers do make the process faster, and I know that a lot of people, whether they are donating their Christmas cards, holiday cards, or whether they're making them for family and friends, it can be a really time-consuming process because a lot of people make a lot of cards and they want to send a lot of cards. So I thought I'd show one way to make it a little bit easier, and that is to use the sticker sentiments. I think that stamping would be, pretty much the same amount of time, honestly, but trying to find the sentiment that matches perfectly, whereas like these were kind of made to coordinate together, bought in the same section, and they do give you a few options. So I don't know that it's really that much of a time saver, but I thought it was an interesting option, and certainly for me, being able to, being able to stamp the image, it's like stamp a sentiment. Sometimes I then want to mat it. Like I want to put the sentiment on a little circle or a little shape or a little banner. And I won't have to do that with the stickers. So I hope that makes sense, because that's another like big motivation for why I decided to go with the stickers. So that Santa, once I had framed him, or once I had cut him down to a way that made sense, like I had to cut off the ho 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 because it wouldn't fit all the way, he needed to be put on a mat. So I started with him first because I knew he was one of the ones who, you know, I needed to make sure that I had paper that made sense for him. So I started there. Then I went to this deer because I wasn't really sure how I would use him. In this instance, stamping a large sentiment probably would have made this card easier. It probably would have looked a little bit better maybe than the sticker, because the sticker I kind of feel like is too small. It's kind of floating in space, and I do wind up putting it on another mat on a banner. I put the sticker on a banner, and honestly, if I wasn't doing this as like a paper pad tutorial, I probably would have searched my stash and found a sentiment, because I think that would have worked a little bit better. But I wanted to try to keep things consistent and use the stickers throughout and show you that there are ways to make it work, even if that wasn't necessarily like my instinct or my go-to. So I'm going to create a simple banner from some of the scrap cardstock, or card paper, not cardstock, that I have laying on my desk. One of the nice things about trying to kill a whole paper pad, trying to use up, probably a better way to say it, use up a whole paper pad in one go, is you can kind of spread it out on your work surface and have the scraps right there, so when you need a piece of something, you immediately use it. Whereas if you're starting a card and you have an idea without the paper, then you don't always know what scraps you have, or you don't use up your scraps so well. But when it's all spread out and you're making a bunch, I find that I use more of the small pieces and I don't cut into big pieces as much, because I kind of have started having like a process and a plan for all of them, and I know that I want to have, you know, big chunks so that I can make as many cards as possible. And so I wouldn't necessarily, you know, do that with every single paper pad you own. I'm not going to do this 6x6 process that I do in these tutorials with every paper pad I own, but it is a nice way of being able to make a lot of cards and use up some supplies. You know, there's some paper pads that are a little bit more special to me, and I want to make individual one-off super fancy cards with them, and that's great too. So one of the ways that I'm going to use this paper pad, that I'm going to probably kind of reuse a few times, is to mat one of the little cut-aparts, little 2x2 pieces, onto a 3x3 piece, and then arrange it somehow on a card base. Sometimes I'll keep it super simple like this. I really thought that those little birds were adorable, so I didn't want to cover up too much of the pattern paper, and I didn't want to pick another critter because I thought it would compete. So I thought the Christmas trees would work really well. They, you know, trees and birds, they pair well together. And in this instance, sometimes I was trying to think about how I could make a card from this paper pad that wasn't too Christmassy, so that it could have more of a happy holiday sentiment. And I know that's kind of hard, because like pine trees are not explicitly Christmas, because, you know, there's pine trees in the world all the time, and there's cardinals in the world all the time. So even though they're associated with Christmas, they're just also just things that happen to be in the winter, which is when Christmas is for a lot of people. So I thought, you know, snowflakes, trees, birds, all that is at least a little bit more general. And so maybe those were the cards that I could put the not specifically Christmas sayings on. The sticker pad had, I think, a happy holidays and a season's greetings, maybe. I don't know. It had 2 Christmas sentiments and 2 non-Christmas sentiments. Keeping in mind that I wanted to make some more general cards, here I looked at the snowflake background and I thought, oh, that'll be a good chance. And I kind of ruin it. So it doesn't actually wind up working, because I use a little strip of Santa paper. But a lot of people commented that they liked that paper where I used up some of those teeny tiny scraps. They're like 3/4 of an inch by 4-inch strips that are created by cutting 6x6 papers down to A2 card size. And one of the like simple, easy ways to use them is as strips to sort of ground or mount a 3x3 or some kind of smaller square on. So I thought I'd borrow back that design and use it again. I'm trying to sort of, because there's a couple strips of pattern paper on top of a pattern paper, like there's a lot of pattern going on. That's why I went for the wood grain 3x3 block to again sort of tone it down. I try to mix, and also the bird, he's on a simpler pattern paper, just the stripes there. So again, just trying to mix some bold pattern with some less bold pattern. I would sometimes pause the video in between assembling, partly because, you know, there's 3 of each, so when I come up with a design, I make 2 more cards with it. And I didn't always stop and glue them right away, but sometimes I kind of just like fuss around a bit with paper, and it can take a really long time. So I'm leaving some of it in so you can kind of see how I go through that process. Like here on this paper, there's a lot of really cute little critters in the background, and I'm trying to figure out, like, how am I going to get something, like, how am I going to turn this into a card without covering the critters in a weird way? And I fussed and I fussed and I couldn't figure it out, so I kind of put it again to the side. Another big advantage of working all at one time is that you can kind of revisit it a few times, and you'll kind of eventually spark an idea because you've been playing with the patterns and paper so much. I decided to, after like having some trouble fussing with paper and not being able to figure out what I wanted to do, I decided to work with a simpler pattern to kind of get me going again, if that makes sense. And so hopefully that's a helpful tip as you kind of work through paper pads if you're feeling discouraged, that sometimes you'll want to like stop, make something really simple just so that you haven't like, you don't, you know, slow down too much and lose your mojo. I hope that makes sense. So I knew I wanted to work with the red, and I would use a wood grain 3x3 square paired with it because my other choice of 3x3 squares was just more red paper. And I thought, well, I'm going to see if, you know, if I know those are the 2 things I want, then pull in different scraps that are around my desk to see what else would pair well. And I settled on this holly paper that is also that sort of brown craft color that we see a lot in this paper pad. And rather than just making it a strip along the paper, which I do many times, I decided to cut it as a banner just to kind of mix it up a little bit. Sometimes I like to put the 2-inch strip down the center. Sometimes it's nice to offset it. And in this instance, I put it a little bit off to the side. I'm going to go through and put a bunch of animals on it. Another nice thing about, kind of working all at the same time is you have all these choices. You're not, when you're working with trying to create a single one-off card, you've colored your image and you now have to match your pattern papers to it, which can be kind of tricky. But if you're trying to make a large amount of cards, having things like this where they've already done all the matching for you can be a lot faster and more convenient. And you can go through and try a couple different critters with your card design rather than trying to match your card design to your critters. I'm not saying the other way isn't fun, because I totally do that all the time, but just kind of pointing that out for someone maybe who doesn't feels confident or really enjoys working with pattern paper as opposed to stamping and coloring critters, because that's a whole other process. So I finally decided what I wanted to do with that really busy pattern paper with the little bunnies and the owls on it. And I thought, I could basically choose one of them to not cover. Like, I'm kind of letting the owls be a little bit more of the star, and I'm covering the bunnies a bit. I decided to layer up some banners in the corner. I didn't want to cover up too much of it. A 3x3 square didn't really work well. Using any of the critters didn't really work well because there's already so much going on. There already are so many critters on the card. Adding another critter didn't really look good to me. Using mostly solid pattern papers as opposed to that snowflake might work better for some people. I know that pattern and mixing patterns can be a little bit daunting, and I'm putting a lot of pattern on this paper, but having worked with pattern paper pads for a while now, I've kind of gotten a little bit more comfortable with pattern. So that might be a tip too. It's just like be a little bit uncomfortable with it for a while. Make some cards that you're like, I don't know if those are great. And over time, you might sort of start seeing how you like matching patterns better, and you might get a little, honestly, just a little bit more comfortable with it, and realize that things actually look better than you initially thought they did. So I just layered up a few banners from scraps in the corner, and then I put one of the sticker greetings on it. And I let the pattern paper in the background kind of be the embellishment on that particular card. At this point, I had created a lot of 2 by 6 inch strips. And a lot of times a way to get more cards from a paper pad is to take those 2 by 6 inch strips and glue them together to create another 4 by 6 inch piece, which can then be cut down to the A2 card size of 4 by 5 1/4. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out there, but I've done this a few times, and I'll have a blog post that kind of talks a little bit more about measurements. But if you glue 2 of the 2 inch strips together, and then you cover the seam that's created between them with another 2 inch strip, it's a way to really extend your paper pad, and it looks like you have another large piece of paper, but really you've covered that seam. So I glue 3 2 inch strips together, 2 next to each other and 1 on top, and then I trim it down to that, sort of standard card size. And I did this with patterns because there's 3 of each, so I have 3 2 inch strips of each. I was able to sort of pair things up. Like I took 2 inches to create the base, and 2 of the 2 inch strips to create the base, and then the other one would act as the stripe on the opposite pattern. I hope that makes sense here. Like I have 3 ornament strips. 2 become a card base. The other one becomes the strip that goes down the poinsettia, and the third poinsettia becomes the strip that goes down the ornaments. If you look closely at the video, I'm sure that makes more sense. But that was a way that I didn't have to think as much, because once I found 2 patterns that worked together, I was able to make 2 cards with it, as opposed to only making 1 card and having to constantly try to repair up the patterns. So I'd done a lot of things where I just put the 2 inch strips on a 3 inch strip, 2 inch squares on a 3 inch square. And it's getting kind of boring. So I decided to make some additional 2 by 2 squares with the pattern, I think they're 2 by 1 1/2. So I took one of the 6 inch strips, the 2 by 6 inch strips, and I cut it to be 2 by 1 1/2. So they created some other extra rectangles to use, and that created 4 rectangles. So having some additional sizes allowed me to do some more paper layering. And so I'm taking some of my strips, like my 3/4 inch by 4 inch strips that I talked about earlier, and my 2 by 2 cutouts, and my 3 by 3 squares, and mixing it, and just sort of like layering them on top of each other in a way that looks cute, and then I glue it all together. So definitely really fun to just kind of take all the little scraps that are sitting out on your table and just sort of like play with them. Put some on top of another, offset it, just kind of like move it around till you see something that you like. Here I kind of thought I liked just the bunnies with the green strip there, but I felt like really instead of it just being 2 on top of it, there should be 3. It kind of goes back to the idea that things tend to look good in odd groupings rather than even groupings, so only having 2 squares was an even grouping, even though it was on top of a larger square, which you could consider the third. They didn't really look like a group of 3. Now it looks like a group of 3. There's a blue, a green, and a bunny. And so the little bit about how I'm able to what my thought process is in doing those. So now that I had made a few odd cards and I'd mixed a lot of patterns, I was kind of again at the point where I wanted to tone it back a bit, make another simple card, not mix so many patterns, and sort of, I don't know, give my brain a rest, I guess. I don't know. Here I am taking the squirrel and the ornament paper, and I am at this point actually down to very few papers. I had this 2-inch strip that I really hadn't figured out how I was going to use. It was the one that had the owl and the branch on top of it. And I realized that I could actually cut it down so those presents looked like another cut apart piece. And that would leave me with this little rectangle of snow and green, which actually was really cute for the little squirrel. Like, it would look kind of like he was sitting on a little snowbank, even though he's on a square and the snowbank's on a different square and it's not a sky and all that. But because they, like the way I placed them, it still kind of works together and made sense. And in this instance, those three, the red, the squirrel, and the rectangle with the snow, kind of work as a group of three because they're more similar in size. And so that's kind of the thought process again there. Which left me with these little presents and kind of made like a new cut apart for me, because at this point I'd used most of my animals. And so that was kind of exciting because it helped me to finish off another card. I thought that the presents went really well with Santa in this instance, and so I just sort of glued them a little bit towards the top of a brown one and added a sticker and kind of called it a day. Now, I dealt with most of the large pieces at the beginning, like the one with the deer and the one with the Santa, but I kind of put this owl piece off to the side because I didn't really know how I was going to do it, because again, this is an instance where a large sentiment probably would have been the easiest thing to do, like put a large sentiment opposite the owl. And so you could definitely do that. But again, I wanted to stick more towards what I was doing with the rest of them, so I decided to put a banner and then the sticker. And again, it just balances the owl. There's a little owl on a branch. I have a banner, which is kind of like the branch, and the sticker that's kind of like the owl, so they perfectly balance each other. And that's the thought process there. Now, this is like the little pile of scrap paper is all I have left. And there's a part of me that's kind of okay with just pushing that in the trash bin and calling it a day, because I've gotten a lot of cards. At this point, I think I have 41 cards out of a 48 paper pad sheet, and so like that's phenomenal. But there were some larger pieces still. So what I like to do at that point is to get out a card base and just start sort of gluing things to a card base, or arranging things on a card base and then gluing them down. Rather than, I don't usually go like just start slapping things down with glue, but I took the card base and started arranging little scraps all over it till I came up with something that I liked. So I kept that one simple, used some big pieces, and use my very last little cut apart of an animal, use some of those, that last, two of the 3x3 squares, but I have one more 3x3 square, and I have one more ho ho ho. And I'm like, those are both pretty substantial pieces in the sense that like the ho 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 can really add a lot to the card. There's that big chunk of pattern paper there, and I had this strip that still had these animals on it. So I was like, I think I really can squeeze one more card out of this. So I took that strip, turned it into a banner. I'm going to layer the brown 3x3 square on it. In this case, again, I'm working directly on the card base so that, because I don't have any more large pieces of paper, you could get out a piece of cardstock if that works better for you. If arranging it all on a solid piece of cardstock and then mounting it on a card looks better to you, if you don't like working directly on a card base, that's an idea too. And I'm just going to keep kind of like fussing. I probably shouldn't have taped down that banner yet, because like I just gave you the advice of like move it all around a few times before you glue it down, and then I just sort of impulsively glued it down. But it's fine, because when I'm gluing with the ATG gun, you do have like a few minutes where you can still pull it up gently if you're going to put it back in the same place. And so that's what I did. I pulled it up. I sort of tucked that brown piece of paper underneath, paired up this large snowflake and the ho 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 sentiment, and was able to make one more card out of the scraps that I had there. And I had to add a little extra glue to help hold it down. But it's kind of nice to be able to squeeze out 2 extra cards from what was essentially trash. And now here is literally all that is left from that paper pad. Could I make one more card? Probably, but I was kind of okay with just sort of calling it quits at this point. So I'm going to flip through all the different cards that I made with this paper pad. As you can see, most of them have 3 because there was 3 of each design. And so that made it really simple that when I came up with the design, I'd get a lot of cards for it. But some of them don't because they were those 2-inch strips that I glued together and paired up. And so some of them, there'll only be 2 of something that's very similar, like the hedgehogs there that I showed you during the card making process. And I didn't show every single card because again it would take a long time and there were a lot of repeats, but I hope that this has given you some good ideas, it has get you inspired to start making some Christmas cards, as getting some of those cards done early can certainly help when Christmas time comes. If you want to make some more special cards but then have these as like backups, or if you want to make a paper pad and turn it into some cards you can donate, that would be awesome. So a lot of people always ask, what do you put on the inside of the cards you donate? And you may know by now, but the answer is I put jokes on the inside of the cards that I donate. So I have some jokes. I have happy holiday jokes that are very winter themed, and I have Merry Christmas jokes. And they're going to be linked in the video description at my Card Drive resources page, where you can find a bunch of printable jokes. I have mermaid jokes and pirate jokes, and now I have these new holiday jokes that you can check out and print off to add to your cards. So what I do is I print the jokes and I glue them inside the card and I sign my name. Now, for the card drive that I'm going to be linked, this Christmas specific card, or sorry, the holiday specific card drive that has the prizes, they actually don't want you to put anything on the inside of the card. So please, please go read the rules before you make your cards for that particular card drive. But for the Christmas ones that I can't send to the card drive, I am going to send to another organization that does want you to fill the inside of the cards. But wherever you're going to donate, check their guidelines first. If you need something for the inside of the cards, check out those jokes. So that is it for the card video today. I hope that you enjoyed this, that this kind of filled that itch for some Christmas cards and for another 6x6 paper pad tutorial that I know I've been getting a lot of questions and comments about. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more crafty tutorials, including other 6x6 paper pad tutorials, card kit tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel. The Hero Arts July kit is going to be one of my next few videos, and I also have a lot of, I kind of try to do a lot of different stuff on my channel and some scan and cut videos recently, so hopefully all of that's really helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day. Bye.